I welcome you to the channel. We are an end-time prophetic channel dedicated to awakening the Hebrews who are scattered over the world. As part of the awakening, I've decided today to talk about Hebrew customs in Africa. And when I say Africa, I will include the areas where the black diaspora live. Whether you're talking about North America, the Caribbean, West Indies, and South America, is all included. We are talking about the Hebrew customs of Africa or people of African descent. And the reason that we are talking about the Hebrew customs is that it is a proof that they were Hebrews and they are still Hebrews. They don't have to convert to rabbinic Judaism, and they don't have to do fake DNA tests, and they don't have to kowtow or succumb or beg anyone to recognize them as Hebrews. They are Hebrews in their own right. And when I say nobody, you should not beg anybody to recognize that you are a Hebrew. You should know that historically there have been an effort to erase the Hebrew heritage of the black man, the black woman, the Negro. Regardless of that, a lot of people who identify as Jews, I'm talking about the Ashkenazi Jews, they know that the Negro is a Hebrew. And among those people, I will talk about Henry Kissinger, who recognized that the Igbos of Nigeria are Hebrews. Of course, he will not use the word Hebrew, he will use the word Jew. An historian, explorer, and somebody who knew Africa very well, Leo Africanus, he confirmed that there were Hebrews in the ancient Songhai Empire that existed in West Africa. And Asikia was a Muslim, so he didn't want the Hebrews to practice their customs. He persecuted them and he moved them, he exiled them. As a result of his persecution, the Hebrews fled Timbuktu. And so you know on the record that there were black people who were Hebrews living in Timbuktu in West Africa. And why Timbuktu? You know the history of the dispersions of the Hebrew Israelites. You know of the Assyrian dispersion, the Babylonian dispersion, and you also know the dispersion that came after Jerusalem was destroyed AD 70, and the Hebrews spread to all over Africa and other parts of the world. And when you hear the name of the city Judah in Dahomey, now Benin, West Africa, you know that Hebrews lived in Judah. And the city of Judah is still existing today in West African country of Benin. And you are also aware of the kingdom of Judah. You know the Negro land, the slave coast from where Africans were enslaved and they were taken on slave ships to the Egypts, whether North America, whether the Caribbean or the West Indies, and even as far back as Brazil. Once you are Hebrew, you are always a Hebrew, and your customs are maintained. And there are so many things that will let you lose your custom and your tradition as a Hebrew. One would be when you are taken into captivity, your captor will make sure that you lose your heritage. When you are persecuted, you lose your heritage. And when you are forced to convert to somebody's religion, you will lose your Hebrew heritage. And as I'm talking, the Ashkenazi Jews have forced the African Hebrews to convert to rabbinic Judaism, and they are doing that in Zimbabwe among the Limba Hebrews in Zimbabwe. They are doing it in Ethiopia among the Beta Israel group in Ethiopia, and they are doing it among the Igbos of Nigeria. And so they know that the Negro is a Hebrew, and they are aware of it. And so in 1995, I believe, Israel Prime Minister Ishak Rabin, he sent a delegation to Nigeria to look for the lost Jews, because he heard that there were Jews in Nigeria. Definitely he was talking about the Igbos of Nigeria. And if you look at the transatlantic slave trade, a lot of the Africans who were enslaved and they were deposited in Hampton, Virginia, they were of the Igbo stocks. Igbos were among them. And so they know that the Negro is a Hebrew. Not now. He was a Hebrew. He fled Jerusalem. He was dispersed. And he is under captivity because of disobedience. They still maintain their customs. Some of them have forgotten some of the customs. But if a Hebrew forgets his or her custom, it is prophetic, because the Lord said that you will scatter them and they will even remember, they will not remember their heritage. Luckily, we are looking at the Hebrew customs in Africa. And when I say Africa, I will include the African diaspora. And I'm sure that the Hebrews who were enslaved and taken to Jamaica, Guyana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Brazil, there are some Hebrewic customs that exist today. So I'm going over a sample of the Hebrewic customs and tradition for you to know that the Negro was a Hebrew and he's still a Hebrew. You will see an European practicing Judaism and doing certain things, and luckily he will be able to speak Yiddish, and he will qualify as a Jew because they were recognized as somebody who is an European as a Jew. But if you are a Negro, there's a Negro color line. You ain't no Jew. You are a Negro. And so today I'm going over the Hebrewic customs today. And number one is circumcision of the male child on the 8th day. It's a Hebrewic custom. Moses commanded the Hebrews to circumcise the male child on the 8th day. Day number 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. The 8th day male circumcision, and that practice still continues in Africa. The Ashantis are part of it, and other Hebrew tribes are also part of it. Number 2, sacrifice for sin. You sacrifice because you have sinned, and you sacrifice by killing an animal, whether a sheep, a goat, or a fowl. It's because you have sinned and you have to do the sacrifice. When I was growing up, I thought that that is idolatry. Um, it is an idolatry because you are aware that the Messiah died and there's no need for that sacrifice because the death of the Messiah is an atonement for our sins. But the African still does sacrifice. I'm not saying all sacrifices are evidence of Hebrewic custom, but I'm saying that the Hebrews in Africa, they sacrifice because they want to atone for sin. And I've seen it where people sacrifice because of sin. They believe that the sacrifice will wipe away their sin. Of course, no sacrifice will be able to wipe away our sin. It is the blood of the Lamb that can wipe away our, our sins. Number three, division of African tribes into 12 clans. And you can ask yourself, what tribes in the world divide themselves into clans, and what tribes in the world divide themselves into 12 clans? And when you answer the question, you go into Hebrew history, and then you know that definitely there were 12 tribes of Israel, the sons of Jacob, 12. So we have 12 tribes of Israel. The Ashantis in Ghana, they have 12 clans. And as you are aware, the Ashantis are Hebrews. So they are maintaining the Hebrewic custom of organizing themselves into 12 clans. And one of the clans is called Oyoko clan. And Oyoko clan is the clan from which the Asante chief or the king is selected. You cannot select the Asante king from any other clan except the Oyoko clan, Oyoko. In the same way that the priests in Israel were selected from a particular clan. You know, the clan where the high priest was selected from, and then you know the clan where the kings of Israel were also selected from. And so the Hebrews in Africa, I'm talking about the Ashantis, they still maintain the Hebraic tradition of organizing their tribe into 12 clans. They have not forgotten their Hebrew heritage. Let's go to number 4, wearing of breastplate. And if you know Hebrew tradition, the high priest wore breastplate, and it is a garment, a part of their garment where they protect their breast. And the breastplate has different colors. The Ashantis have the breast plates as it happened in an ancient Israel. And a lot of European scholars are amazed. British historians who have studied the Ashanti custom, they know that the Ashanti's breastplate is the same and similar to the ancient garment of the high priest of the Israel. And we are so there is consensus that the Ashantis are Hebrews, and wearing the breast plate is similar to the practice of the Levite priests in ancient Israel. And you also see the breastplate among the Ethiopian Jews. It is evidence that the Ethiopians are Hebrews. I'm not sure. I don't have time to state the difference between a Hebrew and a Jew, but I'll refer you to Genesis 14, verse 13. And if you have the Bible, if you have the King James Bible, you know that Abraham was referred to as a Hebrew in Genesis 14, verse 13. And so the Abraham was a Hebrew, and we are all Hebrews. And the word Jew came into existence, in the 18th century, and it was not part of the original letters of the alphabet, the Hebrew alphabet. Jew was not in the original Bible. So I'm talking about Hebrews, and they are talking about Ethiopian Jews, but I would say Ethiopian Hebrews. Blood sacrifice and on altars. Blood sacrifice and on altars. You have an altar, and then you sacrifice on the altar. If you see it happening in any other African tribe, you would think that it is adultery. But were there any altars in ancient Israel? Yes. Were sacrifices offered on the altars? Yes, they did it in the ancient times, until the Messiah came and his blood is offered on the cross for the atonement of sin for all of us. And if you go to Ghana, there's a tribe called Ga, and the Gans are also Hebrews, and their traditions, their oral history tells that they migrated from Israel to Egypt, to Nigeria, and then to Ghana. Up till now, there are certain practices that they engage in, and that are still Hebrewic. Hebrewic in the sense that they are Hebrews, and they still maintain their Hebrew custom. If you were in 2024, they still do it. And I'll give you several examples. Number one, in May, they have a festival in Ghana, in the capital of Ghana, where they predominate. They do their festivals, and their festival is called Homowo, Homowo, the Homowo Festival. The Homowo Festival is the Passover. That was a feast in Israel. And during the Homowo Festival, the Gans, they distribute some yam, pounded yam, and that is similar to the unleavened bread that was eaten by the Israelites under the instructions of Moses. And they also sprinkle palm oil on doorposts. And sprinkling palm oil on doorposts is similar to sprinkling of blood on the doorpost. You remember what happened in Egypt when Moses was leading the Israelites from Egypt. They put the blood of the lamb on the doorpost, and so that the angel of death comes and will spare the children of the Hebrews. The Gans do the same. They don't use animal blood; they use palm oil. And when I interview them, they say it's because they want to do it cheaper. Not everybody will be able to buy a goat or a sheep to kill it. And so that custom has been corrupted to some extent, but it's still a Hebrew custom. And among the Gans, they have a priest, Wolomel. That is the name of the priest. And the priest, the Wolomel priest, is very, very important in the tradition of the Gans. And it's similar to the ancient Israelites, as you are aware. The priests and the prophets were integral part of the Israeli society. The priests were very, very important, and the prophets were very, very important. And so, even in contemporary times, among the Gans in Ghana, the Wolome or the high priest is very, very important, and he offers a lot of sacrifices, and then he does a lot of intercession for the Ghana people in the same way that the priests and the prophets of Israel did intercession for the Israelites. The next custom or tradition we'll talk about is menstrual seclusion of women. When women are in their menses, they are secluded. And where is the tradition coming from? It's an Israelite tradition in the Old Testament. And the Hebrews in Africa, they practice it up till today, and I am aware of it because I am an Ashanti, and so I'm aware of this tradition. And you also see African languages that have similarities with Hebrews, and you have to go deep into history, and you remember that the Hebrews were black people and they were Negroes. And so don't let anybody deceive you. If they were Hebrews, of course, they spoke the Hebrew language. And so many years, you see similarities between the languages of some African tribes and Hebrew similarities. If you go to Nigeria, if you talk to the Igbos, they will tell you that the word Igbo, IGBO, is a corruption of the word Hebrew, because they will ask you, where are you from? Oh, I'm a Hebrew. And they will say it so fast, and you will think they say, I am an Igbo. So Igbo is a corruption of Hebrew. And the Igbos in Nigeria are Hebrews, and even your brother Henry Kissinger, who died not long ago, who was a Jew, he recognized that the Igbos are Jews. Definitely they are Hebrews. Henry Kissinger recognized that. And as I said, former Prime Minister of Israel, Ishak Rabin, he recognized that the Igbos of Nigeria are Hebrews. He they will call them Jews. The Sabbath. The Sabbath is very, very important. If you are a Hebrew, you know the Sabbath. And the Africans who are Hebrews, they still maintain the Sabbath, worshiping the Lord on the Sabbath. And among the Ashantis, it's Saturday. And a lot of Hebrew tribes in Africa still maintain the Sabbath, and that is evidence that they have not forgotten their history. They are still Hebrews, and they maintain the Hebrewic customs. And if you are talking about the Ashanti, they have three major festivals that they still practice. They still maintain the festivals, they organize the festivals, and the festivals are they are similar to the three major festivals in Israel. Um, the I'm talking about the Feast of Tabernacles, the Feast of the Passover feast, and um, the Ashantis have three feasts similar to the three major feasts that were celebrated in ancient Israel. And one of the feasts in Ashanti is the Ojura Festival. The Ojura Festival is very, very big in Ashanti, and it is a Hebrewic festival that they are celebrating in Ghana. Some British historians who studied the Ashantis, they didn't understand why they were doing that. Why are you doing all those things? But later they found out that the Ashantis are Hebrews, and they are practicing their Hebrewic customs. So the Europeans know that the Africans are Hebrews. Why do they know? They know because when they had contact with the Africans, they knew their culture and they knew their practices. And so when Britain decided to give a homeland to the Ashkenazi Jews, they wanted to give the homeland in Uganda to the Ashkenazi Jew because in Uganda they are Hebrews. Yada Hebrews in Uganda. So the Europeans are aware that Africans were Hebrews, and so they knew that they were enslaving Hebrews. They knew because they enslaved Negroes from the kingdom of Judah, located in the Negro land, aka the slave coast of West Africa. And if you have done research about the transatlantic slave trade, you know the theater of the slave trade was the slave coast of West Africa, where a lot of Africans were enslaved, and they were stored in the slave dungeons in Ghana, the Elimina slave dungeon, and the Cape Coast slave dungeon. The Elimina slave dungeon was built in 1482, the first of its kind in Africa, and the largest of its kind in Africa, built by the Portuguese. And so today we are focused on a sample of the Hebrewic customs that you see in Africa, which is an evidence showing that the Negro, if you permit me to use the word, is a Hebrew, and the prophecy fits the Negroes. Whether you are talking about Isaiah 11:11, where the outcasts of Israel and the dispersed of Judah will be gathered from places listed, including Cush and the islands of the sea. And I've never seen any European evangelical who is able to explain how Isaiah 11:11 fits into the narrative of the 1948 regathering of the Jews in Israel. It is the African, the Hebrews scattered over the world that fit the prophecies in Isaiah 11:11, the prophecies in Deuteronomy 28, and the prophecies in Zephaniah 3 verse 10. So we have focused on the Hebraic customs that you can find among the Hebrew tribes who are in Africa, whose ancestors were enslaved and taken on ships to fulfill Deuteronomy 28 verses 8. Thank you for watching this video.